Welcome to Crafty Polyglot, the monthly podcast where language meets creativity. Each month, we sit down with leading voices and innovators in language education, from renowned educators to pioneers shaping the future of multilingual learning. Together, we explore the art, the science, and the passion behind mastering languages, uncovering the strategies and stories that inspire learners and educators around the globe. Whether you're a teacher, a student, or simply a language enthusiast, Crafty Polyglot is your gateway to fresh insights, practical tips, and meaningful conversations that celebrate the vibrant world of languages. Join us on this journey, because in every language, there's a new world to discover.
Hello, welcome to the Horse Education Podcast, The Crafty Polyglot. I am Dr. Felicia EYBL, and I am interviewing today Dr. Marie Gunter from the Department of Public Instruction. We are so honored to have you join us today on this podcast. She is a nationally recognized leader in dual language education. At the Crafty Polyglot, we focus on how individuals and groups craft programs and opportunities for children to become polyglots. That said, we have created some questions for you, Dr. Gunter, that we believe will be of interest to parents and educators alike. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Thank you. So tell us, how did you personally become a strong advocate of dual language immersion programs?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. Of course, as a language teacher, I'm always about, more languages for more students. But back at the beginning of my career, I actually traveled with my husband to Prince Edward Island in Canada for a conference he had there. They knew families were coming. When they found out I was a language educator, they actually invited me to go to the French immersion program on the island and talk with the teachers. And I was so impressed. It was an amazing program. And here I was, a very new educator, and I had never heard of immersion at that time. And I saw the benefits it could have with students. I talked to those teachers, and I went away from that thinking, wow, I wish we had this in the United States. I was working in Wisconsin then. And so a few years later, I found out about the Milwaukee Spanish dual language programs as well. And then when I came to this position in North Carolina in 2007, I realized I was walking into an opportunity that championed dual language immersion education already, because by that time, the programs in North Carolina were almost 20 years old. And so that love of dual language programs early on, when I found out about it, I was able to amplify that and really dive into that here in North Carolina, because I realized quickly the program I had visited at that time, that there were already programs growing in North Carolina long before I visited that first one.
That is great and amazing. So I just have to ask this quick question. Is your husband also an educator?
He's not. He's actually in agriculture. And so it was an agriculture conference we went to, and that's why they wanted to reach out to families, because if you were bringing somebody with you, they wanted that person to have a good experience, and Prince Edward Island as well. And so they did that for a lot of the families there. So I was a teacher and a language teacher, and they linked me up with their immersion school. But the other folks who came along also got to explore different aspects of the island and of that community based on their interests. But yeah, he's in agriculture and he's in higher education, I guess, in that sense.
Great. That is great. So North Carolina's DLI programs are well respected nationwide for both the number of programs and the range of languages offered. Please tell us more about the dual language immersion programs in North Carolina and how these programs were developed and continue to be successful.
Well, I'll tell you that right now we have 8 DLI languages in North Carolina. We have Cherokee, Chinese, French, German, Greek, Japanese, Spanish, and Urdu. And there are very different stories behind each of those. For example, Spanish was our first DLI program language. The first program, in fact, was in the fall of 1990 in Guilford County schools. And obviously, Spanish is our most commonly taught language in North Carolina, whether we're talking about, modern language programs or DLI programs. And so there's Spanish programs all over for a variety of reasons. After that, French, German, and Japanese DLI programs developed, and that was based on interest and particularly need in the Charlotte area with our businesses and our heritage communities, as well as our weekend schools there for those languages. Next up was Chinese. Chinese is now the second most common DLI language in the state, and it serves a lot of heritage communities, and it's often linked with global opportunities for students. Greek is an interesting one as well. We have one Greek DLI program, And it's at the center of a Greek heritage community. And it's actually one of 8 in the United States that does Greek dual language immersion.
Is that the one in Charlotte?
Yes, Socrates Academy.
Mm-hmm.
We also have Cherokee, of course, and that is part of the revitalization efforts of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, or EBCI, for both their language and culture. And our Cherokee DLI program actually just celebrated their 20-year anniversary. So they are a well-established program and have been connecting with the educators in, for example, Oklahoma, where they also have a Cherokee immersion program. And finally, our newest language for DLI is Urdu. And that's offered in a school that has 2 DLI programs based on community needs. It actually has a Spanish DLI program and an Urdu DLI program side by side in the school. And of course, there are a lot of heritage speakers of both languages. So many times our DLI programs are based on, as we said, community needs and requests, the heritage and home languages in that area, and just the desire to make sure students are globally prepared when they graduate from high school.
That is great. And, the number of DLI programs just continues to grow. And I really think that is positive.
Yes.
That's really good. So how have resources and support for dual language immersion programs improved since the earliest programs were established in North Carolina in the early 1990s?
Well, those resources have grown by leaps and bounds. Our early programs, as you know, they work together. And they visited established DLI schools in other states. And they included folks like school educators, district level educators, and even state level educators in those visits, so that we all had a foundation of what does a good DLI program look like. After that, we did some coordination across the state, and that took a lot of different forms. One of the first things was the Foreign Language Assistance Program, or FLAP grant, to build infrastructure for our DLI program in the state. That led to things like the DLI seminar for teachers and administrators that included site visits, like to our North Carolina programs that were just growing and beginning to move into things like the secondary level and so forth. That also led to dual language immersion being in our world language state standards to guide the development of the DLI program language. After that, things continued to evolve. And like the DLI seminar, over time became part of the Fostering Language Acquisition in North Carolina, or FLANC, spring conference. And that included, again, site visits to programs within our state so people could see what a good DLI program looked like and what they looked like at different stages. What does it look like when you're just starting out and you only have kindergarten and maybe first grade, versus what happens when those students go to middle school for the first time, or high school. And over time, FLANC has become the professional home for our DLI educators. But that's a lot of years of growth. Another resource that has really helped us in North Carolina is building and maintaining our North Carolina DLI program directory. That recognizes all of our DLI programs. That helps with networking across the state and even around the country, to tell you the truth. It's also a way for our DLI educators to share what works, either when they're establishing or expanding a DLI program, and they connect with each other. In addition, we have tried to compile resources that have been developed locally in our programs, as well as in other ways, and to share those so that we have them available, let's say on the statewide or the state website for DLI. But we also continue to grow those resources and materials in different ways. So, for example, we have a DLI North Carolina committee that meets regularly, and that has been happening for a number of years. I think our first one was in probably 20. And so what they do over time is inform about things like what are the professional development needs of our DLI field, and what resources and materials are most important for us to have, and how do we get those? Do we build them? Do we pull from other resources and compile them and publish them that way? What do we do? We also have been helped with really good communication. So we have, for example, a DLI educators listserv people can join that has regular newsletters that go out and announcements. And we've also set up a DLI state resources section on the NCDPI DLI webpage with links to things like the directory, frequently asked questions section that the state has built based on feedback like from our DLI and NC committee, but then continues to grow to support our local programs in a variety of ways. We also have posted research on DLI on that page, so that if you want to know about things like the impact being in a DLI program has on closing achievement gaps and helping students be successful academically, it's all posted there. We also feature research from our North Carolina educators and programs when it is published. And finally, we have information about things like the standards, not just the world language standards That's important, of course, for our DLI program language development, but information about our other standards for English language arts, for English language development, and of course, for all of the content areas that we might be teaching in a language other than English, but like math and science and social studies.
That is a lot of information. And it really is wonderful that the language programs are supported by the Department of Public Instruction and that they continue to grow their resources and support for the schools. The number and diversity of home languages in North Carolina are increasing rapidly. As the state becomes home to a growing number of polyglots, how many non-English home languages are represented in the state schools today? And I think you named the 5 most common, but could you review those for us?
Sure. Currently, there are over 380 languages, besides English, that are used in students' homes across the state. And that's from our home language survey, which is done every year. And that information is published in our language diversity briefs or reports for the state. But yeah, over 380 languages. The top 5 are Spanish, Arabic, Telugu, Chinese, and then there's a tie for number 5, Hindi and Urdu.
Wow.
But yeah. So very linguistically diverse. And, one thing to always remember with those home languages is that those students are bringing language as an asset to our schools and our classrooms. And not all of those students are English learners. Some of them are, but some of them are already bilingual in their home language and English when they come to school.
And that is the good part, that they are bringing their culture and their language to our schools, which makes our schools so much better places. I didn't realize that there were 380 home languages in the state. That is amazing. And in the past, there was a push for children and their families to abandon the home language and focus solely on learning English. Today, parents are encouraged to use their home language to support their child's speaking, listening, and cognitive development. Why is this approach recommended, and what guidance can be offered to parents who speak a language other than English to help support their child emotionally, linguistically, and culturally?
Well, as you know, strong skills in a home language actually supports learning English. Language builds on language, so it's not either or, it's both.
Right.
And families obviously do not need to speak English to support their child's success. What matters most is meaningful interaction. And so when we think about the parent's perspective, parents can support their child's success in many ways. So, for example, talking to them, telling stories and asking questions in their home language is always helpful. Reading books, singing songs, and sharing family traditions, encouraging conversations about school and daily experiences, and of course, celebrating their culture and helping children feel proud of who they are and the fact that they're bilingual. And we know too, children learn best when adults speak to them in the language they know most deeply and comfortably. So when parents use that home language with their child, their children are hearing richer vocabulary and more complex ideas. Also, family bonds stay strong, particularly intergenerationally, if students can use a home and heritage language. And of course, their cultural identity is preserved and a sense of belonging develops for that student. And then their thinking skills and literacy obviously grow in both languages if you're doing those kinds of things with your child at home. And children benefit emotionally too when their language and culture are valued. They benefit academically when their first language continues to grow. And families should be reassured, you're not holding your child back by using your home language. You're helping them build a strong foundation for learning English and for lifelong success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. So in some states, dual language immersion programs primarily serve students learning English and helping them maintain and develop literacy in their home language while adding English to their linguistic abilities. In North Carolina's DLI programs, are there more students learning English or more students learning a second or third language other than English? And what factors explain the prevalence of the different DLI models of instruction in North Carolina?
So currently, about 65% of our DLI programs are what we consider one way. So where the majority of students are native English speakers learning that DLI program language, right? And that means there are 35% that are what we call two-way DLI programs that have a combination of native speakers of English and native speakers of the DLI program language. North Carolina is a local control state, so the type of program to offer and which languages and so forth is entirely a local decision. But when districts and schools are making that decision, they're looking at things like the community demographics and the resources there. So, for example, is there a weekend school, or what is the availability of bilingual teachers? That's another resource in the community. They're also looking at things like district goals. Do they want to focus on heritage language development or home language development? Or do they want to do world language immersion kinds of things? Or do they want to do both? Because we have districts that have both one-way and two-way DLI programs, again, based on their community needs at their different schools. They also consider, obviously, student needs and the benefits of DLI to things like academic success and cognitive development. And lastly, of course, and maybe it should be the last on the list, but parent demand is very important. And offering DLI programs and deciding, what kind of program there will be, where that's going to be offered, how admissions are going to be handled. Many of our DLI programs are in neighborhood schools and in regular attendance zones. Some are magnet programs, that kind of thing. It just depends on the district and, again, what's most important to that school community. And one thing that's important to think about is North Carolina's DLI programs really reflect a shift in mindset. Bilingualism is viewed not just as support for English learners, but as an asset and opportunity for all students in that program.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is currently a widespread shortage of K-12 teachers. Most teachers in dual language immersion programs are guest teachers who are native speakers of the language they teach. How do students benefit from having teachers who are native speakers of the non-English language?
Teachers bring many things to our schools, and certainly our international teachers have that global perspective that they bring to their classroom, to their students, to their school, and their whole community. Our international teachers also bring different language models. Just like English, there are a variety of Spanishes spoken around the world and Chinese and so on. And so the students are getting different experiences with their DLI program language when they've got a native speaking teacher. That person could be from Colombia or Argentina or Spain or many other places around the Spanish speaking world. And of course, that applies in other languages as well. And also, teachers bring a variety of cultural experiences to share with their students. And that's important too, as we think about not just language development, but also interculturality and students understanding the sociocultural connections they can make within their community and around the world.
So what steps can parents and schools take to support teachers who have recently arrived in the United States?
There are many things that parents and schools can do. Some of them are the kinds of things parents would do with any teacher, right? So get to know their child's teacher, and all the teachers in the school participate in school events, find out what's going on and be involved. They might also want to volunteer or in some other way participate in activities maybe in the classroom or the media center or some other school spaces. Also, some of our parents, particularly with students in DLI programs, sometimes help out with homestays when our international teachers first arrive, or make sure they include them in things like family celebrations around holidays or the kinds of activities they're going to. Maybe they participate in, going to college ball games or something like that on the weekend, and they involve the teacher in that so that they can see too, what is American culture here in North Carolina, and make everyone feel welcome. Schools have a big role to play too. Many of our schools who have guest teachers make sure that those teachers have mentors, both a professional mentor to help them with things like writing standards-based curriculum and that kind of thing, as well as a cultural mentor, someone to go to with their questions about, education culture to start with. How does school work in the U.S., different from wherever they're coming from? And also what they need to do culturally and what are the cultural cues and things that will help them better understand what's happening in their school and the community and serving their students and working with their parents. Schools also play a big role in things like providing support for teachers when they first arrive, making sure they know where to find housing and do those logistical things, set up a place to live and get transportation to and from school and out into other places in the community. They may also want to make sure that they get connected to other guest teachers in the community or heritage communities that would speak to that teacher's background that they could also get involved in different ways.
Those are great ideas and suggestions. The North Carolina Department of Public Instruction released new world language standards in 2024 that address teaching non-English languages to students in kindergarten through grade 12. How will the new standards better support dual language immersion programs, and students' language development?
Well, our new 2024 World Language State Standards, first of all, describe elementary and secondary DLI programs and their student outcomes or proficiency expectations for all DLI languages K-12. So that support is there across the board. The K-12 sequence options are outlined so that our DLI programs can plan for their students' language development, first in language arts or their literacy classes in the language, but also in content instruction, because students are learning things like math, science, social studies, and those other standards, but taught using the DLI language. And so when we think about what's in the standards and how we're looking at students building proficiency in their DLI program language, all of that language input counts, if you will, in students developing the levels of language that they need to as they progress through DLI programs K-12.
What would be your advice to parents and families considering a dual language or immersion program for their children?
I would say find the DLI program that's best for your child so that they'll graduate as academically successful, biliterate, bilingual, and culturally competent global citizens. In North Carolina, there are over 300 programs and in 8 different languages, as we said. Nearly half of our districts, plus several of our charter schools, offer a DLI program. So there are many, many options available to parents. And I would also say to parents, if there's not a DLI program yet where you need one to be the catalyst and get one started.
That's great. Thank you. So you have been very informative and generous with your time, and we really appreciate that. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Well, I appreciate you inviting me to share about world languages in North Carolina. I want to emphasize that there are many ways for students to learn languages K-12. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about the Global Language Endorsement, or GLE. That's our state's seal of biliteracy. Seal of biliteracy is a way for our high school graduates to be recognized for their skills in English and a world language as they move into college admissions, the workforce, or the military. And that's an important recognition, I think, for our GLI students, but also for all students, particularly when we think about recognizing the time and energy they've spent learning a language other than English and making sure that we champion things like home and heritage languages as students move forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We certainly appreciate it. And you have been very informative, and I'm sure families and educators will enjoy this and the information they've learned from you. Thank you.
Thank you.